paragraph, rather a long paragraph, left out. We'll read it from the book, but you'll find when you come to the bottom of the first page of The True Entity of Light, where it says people in the future, you'll find there's another paragraph appears there. After that, before we read the final paragraph, starting in this letter. So please don't despise if there's a long section comes through which you've not got in your book. So. We chose, or I chose, this last part of the Goshen, from no matter what onwards, because I think you'll find it really does round off and summarize so much of what you've been discussing during this course. As it happens, this was also the lecture which Vice President Suji gave during Tozan when we visited the Sokodama headquarters. Some of the things that I say today, I should be taking from his lecture. But I'm not going to attempt to give a lecture like Mr. Suji, because he's such a unique person. Vice President Suji has practiced now 47 years. He's one of the very few people in the government who's served all four presidents since he started the practice. He's a really a unique person. Treasure, many of you have read his guidance in the Sacred Times. So, as I say, I shan't give the lecture like he does. Some of the points he mentioned I shall bring up. This Gosho was written, as so many of the great Gosho were, on Sado Island, when Nichiren Daishonin was in exile. Towards the end of his exile, in fact, on the 17th of May, 1273. 17th of May, 1273. The 17th of May is also, as it happens, an important day for NSU Kent, because it was on the 17th of May that we opened our first centre at Richmond in London. And it's also interesting that the time we opened the Richmond Centre, I discovered just by chance, reading a book, that by the ancient lunar calendar, the 17th of May would be the 28th of April. And the 28th of April, as you know, was the day on which Nam-myoho-renge-kyo was first declared by Nichiren Daishonin. The 17th of May altogether is a significant day. This is the day, this is really incredibly great Gosho that was written. So as Nichiren Daishonin says in this Gosho, this contains my enlightenment, his whole enlightenment to life and to Kosen Rufu, and the future of Buddhism is contained in this one comparatively short Gosho. So it's an incredibly important one. And the Gosho which we can read over and over again, always get more and more out of it. So first of all, I think we'll read through the whole Gosho from beginning to end, and then I'll start talking about it in the usual way, piece by piece. Okay.
No matter what, maintain your faith as a votary of the Lotus Sutra and forever exert yourself as Nichiren's disciple. If you are of the same mind as Nichiren, you must be a bodhisattva of the earth. And since you are a bodhisattva of the earth, there is not the slightest doubt that you have been a disciple of the Buddha from the remotest past. The Jujutsu's chapter states, I have taught these people since the remotest past. There should be no discrimination among those who propagate the 5 characters of Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law, be they men or women. Were they not bodhisattvas of the earth, they could not chant the Daimoku. Only I, Nichiren, at first chanted Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but then 2, 3, and 100 followed, chanting and teaching others. Likewise, propagation will unfold this way in the future. Doesn't this signify emerging from the earth? At the time of Kosen Rifu, the entire Japanese nation will chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, surely as an arrow aimed at the earth cannot miss the target. But now you must build your reputation as a votary of the Lotus Sutra and devote yourself to it. Shakyamuni Buddha and Tahoe Buddha, seated in the treasure tower in the air, surrounded by all other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, nodded in agreement. What they decided upon was solely for the perpetuation of the true law throughout the latter day. Tahoe Buddha had offered Shakyamuni Buddha a place beside him, and when they unfurled the banner of Myoho Renge Kyo, the two leaders of the entire multitude made their decision together. Could there have been anything false in their decision? Their ultimate purpose in meeting was to provide a way for all of us ordinary people to attain Buddhahood. Although I was not at that ceremony, in looking at the sutra, this is crystal clear. On the other hand, I may have been at the ceremony, but since I am a common mortal, it is beyond my power to know the past. There is no doubt, however, that in the present life I am the votary of the Lotus Sutra, and that in the future I will therefore reach the seat of enlightenment. Judging the past from this point of view, I must have been at the ceremony in the air. There can be no discontinuity between past, present, and future. Because I view things this way, I feel immeasurable delight, even though I am now in exile. Joy as well as sorrow brings us to tears. Tears express our feelings for both blessings and misfortune. The 1,000 arhats shed tears in memory of the Buddha, and in tears Bodhisattva Monju chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. From among those 1,000 arhats, the Venerable Ananda replied in tears, "Thus I heard." Thereupon the tears of all the others fell, wetting their inkstones, and they wrote Myoho Renge Kyo, followed by, "Thus I heard." I, Nichiren, now feel exactly as they did. I am now in exile because I spread the teaching of Myoho Renge Kyo. I spread this teaching because I, too, heard thus. Shakyamuni Buddha and Tahoe Buddha left Myoho Renge Kyo for the Japanese and all people in the future. I cannot hold back my tears when I think of the great persecution confronting me now, or when I think of the joy of attaining Buddhahood in the future. Birds cry, but never shed tears. I, Nichiren, do not cry, but my tears flow ceaselessly. I shed my tears not for worldly affairs, but solely for the sake of the Lotus Sutra. So indeed, they must be tears of Amrita. The Nirvana Sutra states that while the tears one sheds throughout his many existences on the death of his parents, brothers, sisters, wives, children, and followers may surpass the quantity of water in all the seas, he weeps not a drop for Buddhism. One becomes a votary of the Lotus Sutra by virtue of his practice in past existences. It is karmic relationships that determine which, among so many of the same kind of trees, are made into images of Buddha. It's also because of karma that some Buddhas are born as provisional ones. In this letter, I have written my most important teachings. Grasp their meaning and make them part of your life. Believe in the Gahonzen, the supreme object of worship in the world. Forge strong faith and receive the protection of Shakyamuni, Tahoe, and all the other Buddhas. Exert yourself in the two ways of practice and study. Without practice and study, there can be no Buddhism. You must not only persevere yourself, you must also teach others. Both practice and study arise from faith. Teach others to the best of your ability, even if only a single sentence or phrase. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. With my deep respect, Nichiren.
Thank you very much. So the title of this Gosho, The True Entity of Life, in Japanese is Shoho Jiso Sho. Shoho, S-H-O-H-O, Jiso, J-I-S-S-O, Sho, S-H-O. Sho means writing. Shoho Jiso means all phenomena in the universe reveal the true entity of life. Shoho Jiso, all phenomena in the universe reveal the true entity of life. The word Shoho means all phenomena. And the word Jiso means true entity. All phenomena, Shoho, true entity, Jiso. Right? The true entity, as you know, is Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. The entity or heart of all things that exist in the entire universe is the Buddha stone, or Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. Or you can call it the mystic law, or the law of life, at the heart of everything. So in other words, Shoho, the true entity, is Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. Jisa, all phenomena, is Nam-myoho. Or you could say, Shoho, phenomenon. Is the gods. Jisa, the true entity, is the gods. The gods, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, the law of life, the mystic law, exists at the heart of everything in the entire universe, including, of course, us. Everybody else existing in this world. Right at the beginning of this dosha, you haven't got it in your books, the Nichiren Buddhism starts it with a question. It reads as follows. Question. In the Hoben chapter of volume 1 of the Lotus Sutra is the passage, the true entity of all phenomena can only be understood and shared by Buddhas. What does this passage mean? This is how, I've abbreviated the slide, this is how this dosha begins. I'll read it again. Question. In the Hoben chapter, which we recite in volume, of volume 1 of the Lotus Sutra is the passage, in quotes, the true entity of all phenomena can only be understood and shared by Buddhas. What does this passage mean? The whole of this dosha is answering that question. So we recite this passage in Gongyo every day. The true entity of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. At the end of the Hoben chapter, before we recite the 10 factors, we say, Yoi Butsu Yo Butsu, Naino Kujin Shoho Jisa, right? Yoi Butsu Yo Butsu, Naino Kujin Shoho Jiso, and then we go on Shoi Shoi. So Yoi Butsu Yo Butsu, Naino Kujin Shoho Jiso means exactly that. True entity of her knowledge can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. We are the Buddhas. We who have discovered Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, or we are discovering that Nam-myoho-renge-kyo is the entity of our lives, the heart of our existence. So if we can understand and share this teaching, incredible purpose. No one who does not yet chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo who truly understand this teaching. You can only understand this teaching by revealing or opening up the true entity of one's own life through chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. Therefore, if you meet someone else who is also chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, you can share this teaching and understand it with them. But without chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, you can never truly understand. So we understand that, I think, quite clearly. One knows that theoretical, we can ask questions before we start to actually chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, can't we? And we all reach a point where we know it's no good asking questions anymore. That we're not getting anywhere. We reach a point where we're going round in circles with our questions. And in the end, we come to a sort of self-realization often, if we're not told by somebody else strictly, unless you begin to practice, you can't understand anymore. The moment we begin to practice, then we can begin to understand and share teaching that is contained in this Gosha, which is Nichiren Buddhism's entire life, but the true entity of all phenomena exists. So that the all phenomena in the universe contain the true entity. Part of everything is Nam-myoho-renge. So, of course, to lead happy, joyful lives as human beings, there can be only one way, and that is bring out the joy of our lives, isn't it? It's so obvious and logical. How can anyone be truly, deeply, totally fulfilled and happy unless they bring out the very heart of themselves, which is Nam-myoho-renge? So long as that part of one's life is just lying later, we can't be fully expressing ourselves as human beings. Therefore, we can't be fully happy. This is the truth of it. That's incredible, wonderful thought. Later, it talks about people, the disciples, nearly weeping tears. But even just saying that nearly makes me want to read with incredible gratitude that this true entity being brought out of myself. Thanks to someone Shakabukuling, and thanks to all the others who protected the gods and brought the teachings in their purity through to this day. It's an amazing thought. This is why when one sees the Daidahonsam, one feels so filled with gratitude. So to be happy then, truly happy and fulfilled, we have to live Nam-myoho. This is why we should chant frequently and regularly. Nichiren Daishonin asked us to chant and live Nam-myoho so that it becomes part of our life. If it becomes part of our life, then it means Buddha state, or the true entity of our lives, is always in the ascendance, always working. So as I said yesterday, what does it mean, living Nam-myoho? It means it's always there, living in one's life, even though one may not actually be chanting at that particular moment. In your life, you're still chanting. So if one falls over, as you go down, you're chanting on your own. It just comes out of you like that. If it's a beautiful evening and you're looking at Mount Olympus over there, you can't prevent yourself from saying Nam-myoho-renge. Or if you meet some friend you've not seen for years, by chance, it rises up in you. Nam-myoho-renge, this is incredible. Or if you face an obstacle, it's a difficult one. Nam-myoho-renge. Or as you die, Nam-myoho-renge. And then when you're in the womb, your mother will chant this Nam-myoho-renge, which means your life, even in the womb, will be filled with Nam-myoho-renge. Amazing things. So, in other words, through making ourselves chant this every day, which sometimes we find so difficult because the negative force of life is trying to stop us, but through doing that, it becomes part of it. We're always chanting. That's the point. Nam-myoho is always waiting to burst out. This is really why Nichiren Daishonin emphasized chanting regularly every day, physically, with our minds. This, of course, is very important in itself, that we chant out loud. Nam-myoho-renge Kyo. Kyo is communication or connection through sound. But at the same time, through doing it, it's always, even when we're not chanting, physically flowing through our mind. So understanding that in itself would make life very joyful. When Mr. Suti was giving this lecture, he said, really, when you're chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, it's like you're saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. That sort of feeling. This incredible wonder and joy that one has the understanding to be able to chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo and bring out the true end of Buddhahood from one's life. So, of course, the other aspect of that is that although we do chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, and through chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, we can draw benefit to us, or we can overcome our difficulties, change our karma, overcome sickness, whatever may be afflicting us in the way of suffering. But at the same time, that is no use, is it, on its own? It's no good us being healthy and strong in a world that's absolutely miserable all around us. So therefore, in the perfect roundness Buddhism, we have the movement of Kosen Rufu, which is the actual effort we make to change society, to change the world that exists around us. Because to be truly happy, that is necessary. We can't stand on a little island, ignoring everything around. So we really see that in this disgusting bombing in Britain. And in the newspapers, similar sort of things all over the world. Beings and violence, needy, arrogant, ruthless people. We have to change them. And we can change step by step. So as Mr. Stujic said, if gold buried in the garden, to be of any value, you've got to dig it up. So, I chanted the Daimoku, which enables us to solve many problems and change much karma within ourselves. But it's only of half value, isn't it? Unless it's combined with actual effort to change the world around us. This is the point. This is the Buddha's will, too, in the perfect roundness of bottom jaw. So this is Shakabuddhism, teaching others to find the gold buried in their gut and to dig it up. Increasing number of people who are revealing their true entity and with whom we can therefore share the enlightenment of the Buddha. So also, as well as Shakabuddha, actual actions and activities to create a better world, which we call a movement for culture, education, peace. So just dwell for a moment on that. Movement, culture, education, and peace, which is the movement for Kosen Rufu, isn't it? It has a slightly different slant to it as compared with pure task of Shakabuddha. The wise culture is to learn great things that exist in the world, which have been created by other people, to overcome that narrow, nationalistic, proud view that only we have the best, to discover the greatness in other people. As you know, Sensei asked this last great festival in Japan should be called the Silk Road to Peace. Well, the Silk Road is not such a meaningful thing to us, but it's very meaningful to everyone who lives in the Far East, because it was the Silk Road across northern India and the mountains that we took the caravans from earliest time across from China to the Middle East and back again. Even to this day, still used. Even today, there are camel caravans going along that route. So this was the great connection between the world that was known in the Far East and the world that existed in the Middle East. And through this connection, even 2,000 years ago, there was an incredible exchange of ideas and thoughts and philosophies and religions and inventions and materials. So through this route across Asia, through this exchange, people in China could discover that there were great things beyond China. Cultural developments, which were even greater some than maybe the Chinese themselves have developed, and vice versa. So respect grew out of that. In other words, on a larger scale, this movement or this effort is no different to when we are trying to relate individually to one other person. What do we say? If someone says, I simply dislike that person intensely, then if you're a good Buddhist friend, you say, well, you've really got to challenge this, because otherwise you're slandering their life. So what do you say? What is the guidance of this? Chant to see their good points. Stop dwelling on what you see as their bad points. Chant to see their good points. Then your relationship with them will be on a warmer foundation, and you can begin to discover that it's possible to respect them and even to be friends. So on a bigger scale, the movement of culture or the Silk Road of peace is the same thing. We have to open our eyes. In his history of the world, Professor Toynbee said the same thing. The world will always be divided, he said, until nations and races can begin to discover the greatness that exists in other people's cultures and respect. Then there's the education. In a sense, they overlap. Education is discovering about the world, discovering the worldness of other people, opening up narrow minds. It's a bad thing that our educational system at the moment is so narrow that we're guided to specialize from such an early age. So when you look around today, you don't find the people with the big, broad minds that maybe one found a generation or two ago. There are not many, if any, Professor Toynbees there. People with huge minds that could embrace many different aspects of this work. Because of specialization, someone goes down a narrow line. And because of financial reasons, when they leave university, the best way they can earn plenty of money is to follow that specialist line. But always they're moving down this narrow area. The whole of our education system is like that. It's one of the tragedies of today. It has to be changed. So even now, in this early stage of development of NSUK, we have a very active education. 40 or 50 people who are teachers. And they get together every so often. Gradually, they're beginning to relate Buddhism to education. And they'll gradually change things in the future. Then we have peace, culture, education, and peace. Our appointment is supporting the United Nations because it's the only world organization that exists. It's the only hope, isn't it? And it has a great and noble charter of human rights, which agrees perfectly with Buddhism. So therefore, Sensei has encouraged us to support the United Nations. And also, of course, we try to educate other people in the horrors of war and in the devastation which is going on our planet. So in this way, even if people don't practice Buddhism, they can begin in a very small way to think in a Buddhist way. And this is very important too. Some people can't practice because of the nature of their karma. But we can begin to open their minds so that they think in a Buddhist way. So as you know, we're trying in a small way, begin to open up ourselves so that the Buddhist teachings or the Buddhist way of thought gets to more and more and more people. So that's the only reason for me to do things like Night Thoughts on ITV, or to be doing the public lectures, which was 18 months ago. Putting a little wedge into the sun. Each time it's done, wedge goes in a little further. People begin to hear about us. And having heard about us, they begin to get a sort of inkling about what the Buddhist view of life is. This is a very important aspect, isn't it? So all these things, under that, the movement, culture, education, and peace, are action on them. Daimoku is one thing, Shakabuku is another thing. And action in society is something else. These three aspects, yet they all overlap and they're all intertwined. For last Friday, as you know, I got back from Helsinki, where another little wedge was being tapped into society in Finland by the staging of SGI in conjunction with the United Nations of an exhibition which is called Nuclear War Threat to Our World. This is quite a small exhibition, very compact, but if someone takes the trouble to really look at it, it conveys an awful lot about response at this moment of war and also the devastation of the planet. And combined with this, an incredible movie which has just been completed by the Japan Broadcasting Corporation called Nuclear Holocaust, which is a factual documentary created by a team of hundreds of scientists from all over the world, including Russia and America, which explains exactly what the results of nuclear warfare is in a factual, scientific way. And when you see this movie, you just think at the end of it, how can anyone prevent themselves from saying we'll get rid of these disgusting weapons? It's unbelievable. That we should go on having. So all these things are little wedges on, but they all count and they all set off people's thoughts in a new direction. So this is the movement, Buddhist movement to which we belong. But behind it all, of course, is the power of Daimoku. The chanting of Namyo Renge-kyo, which means true entity of our lives, is always to the fore and always working. Therefore, our actions are based on qualities of the Buddhist state. Without Daimoku, anything would collapse. It's only Daimoku that does it. And of course, the more it is. This is why Shakubuku is so important, because Daimoku is the main weapon. But additionally, of course, it's very important that we Shakubuku more and more young people. Because we have to transmit, I'm saying I'm talking now of an older person. We have to transmit this law. We have to open up this understanding of the true entity of life amongst young people so that they take it forward for another 2 or 3 generations and secure the future. Without the one, future is dead, isn't it? So, of course, everybody we possibly can. But young people, particular treasures, because they take it forward, guarantee the future. Okay, so let's now have a look at this.
No matter what, maintain your faith as a votary of the Lotus Sutra, and forever exert yourself as Nichiren's disciple. If you are of the same mind as Nichiren, you must be a bodhisattva of the earth. And since you are a bodhisattva of the earth, there is not the slightest doubt that you have been a disciple of the Buddha from the remotest past. The Jujutsu chapter states, I have taught these people since the remotest past. There should be no discrimination among those who propagate the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo in the latter day of the Lord, be they men or women. Were they not bodhisattvas of the earth, they could not chant the Daimoku. Only I, Nichiren, at first chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, but then 2, 3, and 100 followed, chanting and teaching others. Likewise, propagation will unfold this way in the future. Doesn't this signify emerging from the earth? At the time of Kozen Rufu, the entire Japanese nation will chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, as surely as an arrow aimed at the earth cannot miss the target.
So it'll be clear from what we've considered so far that the most important words in that very first sentence are maintain your faith and forever exert yourself. Maintaining no matter what and exerting yourself. Why? Because of constant pressure of negative forces. We can make no bones about this. We cannot practice Buddhism and reveal our Buddhahood without effort. So it's no good kidding ourselves any other way. Effort must be made every day in 3 crowns. Otherwise, we go on because of Sancho Shin. Sensei once said, even if we advance only a millimeter each day, that's great. But never to allow us then to go backwards. There's no such thing as standing still. It's either forwards or backwards. No grey area. Either we're moving forward positively or we're retreating negatively. That's really what it all comes down to. So we have to make effort. When we do Gongyo, we have to make effort. We have to say to ourselves, this is going to be the most glorious Gongyo I've ever done. We made effort this morning. I believe everyone has a fantastic morning Gongyo. That's the way Gongyo should be done, because we're challenging that negative state of life. So observe that stuff, he says. Maintain no matter what. But I believe the most important thing, and this particularly applies to regional groups, districts, where you're really struggling often on your own, you have to help each other. Understand when Sancho Shima is there. It's surprisingly difficult for people to see or understand that what they're going through is nothing else but Sancho Shima. And actually, they're going through it because they're making great effort. Because they're really getting the negative levels of life with their backs to the wall. That's why sometimes it's so hard. So we need each other to fit each other down. That sort of teamwork and friendship is really important. But then Nichiren Buddhism, having said that, points out that because we chant, we are bodhisattvas of the earth. We couldn't chant without being bodhisattvas of the earth. And because we're bodhisattvas of the earth, we also can share between us what Buddhas share, which is an understanding of the true entity of life. So of course, we may be born in extraordinary circumstances that are really difficult. We may be born in poverty. We may be born with cruel parents. We may be born with rich parents. Whatever. And whatever we may do later, mother, driving a taxi cab, paid decorator, doctor, dentist, teacher, tailor, soldier, sailor. But beneath all that, we're bodhisattvas here. Therefore, however much we try to kid ourselves, we can't be happy without fulfilling that role as bodhisattva here. Some of the experiences and some of the things I've heard since I've been here, I know, that realization really hits one when you're living in the Buddha's land, there at trips. How close we've been, or how we've been resisting, hanging on to that thread of what we believe is right for our happiness, which is in fact only transient happiness. Stupid things. Instead of just opening up and giving ourselves the arms and the coast and roof. That is actually the only way we can truly happy. So, of course, what prevents us from opening up, giving ourselves, is our karma. Our karma of past slumber and the working with the three poisons in our life. We talked last night about deep zone. Yes, of course, that point comes in people's lives where they have to do deep zoning because there is a growing awareness that there is a blockage. And somehow we ought to be opening up and revealing the qualities of the Buddha in every aspect of our lives, yet we're not, some reason. And that disappointment or distress grows in us until we really at last know the reason why we're not showing Buddhahood in that way is because we've slumbered. And this is retribution for that slumber. Then through deep Zen, we can sit all over and change.